Just a note before we begin. This episode is best suited to our older strangers. I'm Laurah Norton, and this is One Strange Thing, the show where we search the nation's news archives for stories that can't quite be explained. Strangers, don't we all enjoy a nice vacation? Now, the particulars might vary from one person to the next. You'll never find your intrepid narrator on a beach, for instance, unless something has gone terribly wrong. Or it's a nice seaside in Norway, and it's, say, always nighttime. But there is something out there for everyone. Mountains to climb, cabins to cozy up in, new cities to explore, deserts to admire. We could go on. Now, are we particularly interested in vacations that come with a side of weird tourism? Yes. Has that led us to roadside museums full of displays of deer teeth labeled Bigfoot specimen and plaster alien corpses? Also, yes. But we persist, because in 2025, we are doing it for the plot and for you. One of our very favorite types of destinations, though, is a hotel with some history. The spookier and the fancier, the better. We want turn-down service. We want gilt elevators and grand staircases. We want restaurants with tablecloths and candlelight. And we want ghosts. Plural. Our budgets do tend more toward Holiday Inn Express and free breakfast bars and dinner by DoorDash, but this is a fantasy. And in our dreams, we're staying at the kind of sprawling historical properties that have been around long enough to develop some really spooky legends. And is somewhere that's nice enough to leave chocolates on our pillows and offer fluffy robes, all three ideally. And if we're really in the mood, we might even head over to Texas. Now, when you hear Lone Star State, we are sure that you think about history. But maybe you're not familiar with Texas's luxury resort game. Trust us, there is plenty there to satisfy even the most discerning traveler. But what about a tourist who's interested in haunted accommodations? Well, they've got you there too. There might even be an embarrassment of riches. But if we had our choice, we'd probably head over to Galveston and check out the Grand Galvez, aka the former Hotel Galvez. Some say it's one of the most haunted hotels in the United States. And as with most ghost stories, the origin of those legends can be a little difficult to chase down. Now, according to its official website, the Grand Galvez Resort and Spa is a luxury hotel with hundreds of rooms and, yes, a spa and all the amenities that you could wish for. The Grand Galvez is certainly, yes, grand, and we would have a time if we were ever to visit its saltwater pool or swim-up bar or dozens of other amenities. But it hasn't always been called that. As we said, the property opened up in 1911 under a different name, Hotel Galvez, and that hotel has its own long and spooky history. Both were named, no surprise, for Bernardo de Galvez, 1st Viscount of Galveston. Now, according to the Ghost Texas blog, this Viscount had absolutely nothing to do with the hotel. But why would he? For one, he died well over a century before it opened. And second, during his life, he was, among other things, pretty busy aiding the United States during the Revolutionary War, which we appreciate. Go Eagles! Anyway, according to the hotel's official website, he did visit the area that eventually became the town of Galveston, so that's something. And his portrait hangs in the hotel, and it is said to be haunted-ish. Although, why he would want to hang around a painting, we have no idea. Still, per the hotel's website, the eyes of his portrait are said to track visitors as they walk by. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Now, according to the book Ghost of Galveston, plans for the hotel were laid in the late 19th or early 20th century, And they were grand ones, because the city wanted something big, a destination that would attract tourists and eventually earn the nickname Queen of the Gulf. Apparently, there'd been another hotel there before, called the Beach Hotel, which is pretty on the nose, but it had burned down, and the Galvez was its replacement. And plans for it were important to the city. Per Ghost of Galveston, a storm that ravaged the area at the turn of the century hit the tourist industry hard, and they hoped that the construction of a new luxury destination would lure those visitors back. So, according to Ghost of Galveston, after the storm of 1900, city leaders accelerated plans to erect the Gracious Hotel as a mean of drawing tourists back to the island. And it seemed to work. Quote, "The resort has played host to numerous presidents and celebrities throughout the years, as well as thousands of tourists." But even from the beginning, there was something unsettling about the land where the hotel was built. We already mentioned that the first resort, the Beach Hotel, burned. According to Galveston's official website, that fire had, quote, "been mysterious." And because of strong winds, firefighters had no chance of saving the structure. But that seaside location carried an even heavier history, and perhaps a haunted one, before the first board or brick of the Hotel Galvez was laid. Now, we mentioned that a great storm had affected the city, but we need to tell you more about that, because the impact was immense. According to Houston Family Magazine, the city was booming at the turn of the 20th century, with a population close to 40,000, which made it, quote, "the fourth largest in Texas." It was a bustling place full of commerce and visitors eager to see the ocean. But back on September 8, 1900, what's now known locally as the Great Storm struck. The magazine reported that, quote, "on this night, the number dropped drastically. Not only were 3,600 buildings demolished, but so many people were killed that their bodies exceeded the capacity of conventional burials. Many were weighted and buried at sea, only to wash ashore later." According to Houston Family Magazine, the dead so overwhelmed Galveston that eventually, quote, "residents were permitted to bury the bodies of storm victims however they saw fit." And strangers, to this day, new construction projects turn up unmarked graves. So many people died during this storm that perhaps it's inevitable for rumors of construction in the area to be tied to ghosts and graves, especially when projects really have turned up the remains of those tragically lost during the storm. One of the saddest stories of the Great Storm has been linked in ghost tours and blogs and books to the Hotel Galvez, and that's the tale of St. Mary's Orphan Asylum and the people who fought so valiantly to save it. According to Galveston's official website, the orphanage had been constructed based on an urgent need brought on by the yellow fever epidemic of the 1870s, which had killed the parents of many local children. And the town and church officials worked together to house, feed, and educate the young ones left behind. But when the storm struck in 1900, the orphanage was not spared. Per Galveston.com, quote, "the catastrophic storm of 1900 completely destroyed the orphanage. 10 nuns and at least 90 children were tragically killed despite the nuns' valiant efforts to save the children by securing them to their own bodies with clothesline. 3 orphan boys rescued at sea were the only survivors." Stories of just how hard the women of the orphanage and the locals of the town had tried to save those children are well documented, and a number are recognized for their valor during the storm. Innumerable sources, blogs, books, and newspapers imply that the Hotel Galvez was erected on the site where the orphanage once stood, and that was an early indication of the hauntings and paranormal phenomena that would later occur. Not only are the orphans said to haunt the hotel, but also the spirit of a heroic nun, Sister Catherine, who was one of the women who sacrificed herself trying to save children during the storm. Her name comes up time and time again in the materials relating to hauntings at the hotel. So it would seem that the long-standing stories of hauntings at the Hotel Galvez would have a clear explanation: the destruction of an orphanage on its very grounds. Or that would be the case, except for one strange thing. It seems impossible that the orphans or the nuns could haunt the hotel. Now, the orphanage, it was real, and so was the storm, the tragedy, the heroism of Sister Catherine and the others. But as for the hotel being erected where that building once stood, based on all our research, that is simply not the case. The sites were miles apart. We actually saw locals complaining about this fact all over social media. A plaque was eventually erected at the site where the building had once stood, long after a second replacement orphanage was built. The plaque is placed at 69th and Seawall Boulevard, which is miles away from where the Hotel Galvez was built. The resort is on the same stretch, but as far as we can tell, further inland, and the distance seems to be about 4 miles. According to the Chronicle, it's actually a Walmart that now stands where the orphanage once was, which is very much not where the resort is located. It should be noted, though, that some locals claim that business is haunted too, and have reported various paranormal happenings. There was enough tragedy to go around in Galveston, and so many real graves at sea and on land, without needing to add a destroyed orphanage to the dark history of the hotel. But local legends, they do swirl up, and they often begin with real tragedies. It's the way of things, isn't it? And plenty of others have sprung up at the Hotel Galvez too. Now, as we said, there's no proof that that orphanage had anything to do with the Hotel Galvez. But there certainly were some unfortunate events that happened on the same grounds, like the burning of the former beach hotel and the widespread chaos of the 1900 Great Storm. And maybe that's part of why the hotel had a sense of, well, foreboding right from the beginning. According to its official website, a supposed ghost appeared in one of the earliest photos ever taken at the resort, right when it opened. Quote, an image reportedly captured in an original press photo taken in 1911 hangs in the west lobby of the hotel. Many guests claimed to clearly see the ghost of a gentleman standing in front of a French door, politely tipping his bowler hat. No one says who this man might be. A guest of the first ill-fated hotel that burned before the Galvez was erected? Someone who perished in the Great Storm? Whatever the case, it seems like something might have been lurking from the very beginning. According to the book The Ghost of Galveston, there might have been many specters spotted in the hotel over the years, including but not limited to a ghost bride, and we'll be back to her later, a businessman in the penthouse, a blonde teenager in violet who rides the elevators all day long, and a little blonde girl in pigtails who carries a red rubber ball. This little girl apparently whispers a hopeful, "Ice cream? Ice cream?" to passers-by, which honestly is exactly what any self-respecting ghost child should be doing at a seaside resort. Where these particular spirits came from, we don't know. Hotels have an unfortunate habit of attracting people, and people, well, people do die. Speaking of danger, something that we do find interesting is the number of times storms come up in stories tied to the hotel. There was that terrible storm of 1900, of course, and then, in 1915, a second one struck, a Category 4 hurricane. That's something we can check in historical weather records, and sadly, the storm resulted in a death toll of nearly 300 in the city. But the hotel was spared. According to its official website, that's due to a seawall that was built as the hotel was constructed. It protected the structure from the storm. Legend has it that while the storm raged, the guests continued to celebrate inside, protected from the deadly winds. The third time we found a storm mentioned in the Hotel Galvez's haunted history isn't directly tied to the city itself, but it does intertwine with the hotel's most famous haunting, the story of that ghost bride we mentioned just a little earlier. She's the main attraction on any ghost tour that runs through the resort to this day, and they do have those should you have the mind to take one. According to local lore, the story concerns a woman known as Audra and her devotion to a sailor. It took place back in 1955, at a time when the young woman, well, she should have been at her happiest. Here's the legend as it's told around town. According to Ghost of Galveston, it was, yes, 1955, when, quote, the young woman checked into room 501 at the Hotel Galvez to await the return of her fiancé, a mariner who'd been called to duty just days before the wedding. We're not told if this woman was a local who simply wanted to be close to the sea, or a visitor in town for an oceanside celebration of her vows, or anything helpful of that sort. Just given a room number and told that she was waiting. Per Ghost of Galveston, quote, each day she would leave her room, take an elevator to the 8th floor and climb the ladder to the west turret of the hotel to watch the waters for the return of his ship. At the time, the turrets were open to allow the Gulf breezes to circulate through the building because there was no air conditioning. And strangers, that's where she would wait, watching for the first glimpse of her love. Audra waited weeks, but there was no word. Still though, according to the Galveston Daily News, Audra had been faithfully visiting the turret on the 8th floor when word came that, quote, a horrific storm struck the Gulf of Mexico. And as for her fiancé, he'd been lost at sea. Horrified by the news, Audra returned to that 8th floor lookout one last time, and she threw herself from the hotel turret. And then, per Ghost of Galveston, quote, the tragedy was compounded when her fiancé, who had been rescued by a passing ship, returned to marry his betrothed. Strangers, he discovered, of course, that she had perished. And what happened next? Well, no one ever says, except when it comes to Audra's ghost. That phenomenon has been rather well documented. According to the Daily News, the hotel staff says that Audra never really checked out of room 501. Guests have long reported sightings of a woman dressed in white throughout the property, and thus she's earned the nickname of the Ghost Bride, something she never quite had the chance to become. She's not frightening, they say, but rather kind of sad. The staff reports that the lights flicker when she's near, and that her footsteps can be heard along that turret, even though no one's used that part of the resort in a long, long time. And apparently she's known to wear a certain perfume. Ghost of Galveston say it smelled of gardenias, and that the scent is said to hang in the air when she's near. And the book recorded some funny goings-on in what's known as Audra's room. The story goes that, quote, the rooms no longer use keys, since electronic access panels have been installed. But when Audra doesn't want to be disturbed, nothing will open the door to 501. One guest returned to the front desk to have a problematic electronic key inspected. When the staff scanned the key, the display read, expired 1955. Now, that is just deliciously spooky, isn't it? And possibly a little hard to believe. It fits together just a little too neatly. Although, hey, if we saw that pop up on a key card, well, let's just say our employment at the hotel would have been very brief, and we'd be updating our LinkedIn profiles forthwith. But as for the legend of the Ghost Bride, those are the details that we could find regarding the Hotel Galvez. And could we find any hard evidence to support this legend? We could not. We don't even have a last name for the young woman who became the focus of this tale. There weren't any news stories or wedding announcements or anything at all in the archives that we could pin on an Audra, if she existed, and that was even her name, to the hotel at all. To our knowledge, no one else has been able to track down hard evidence to back up the story either. The story itself feels very anachronistic, too, very 18th or 19th century, for a bride to be pacing turrets and looking for ships, not a very 1955 kind of vibe. But maybe we're being a little too hard on what is, after all, a good story in a hotel that has plenty of them to offer. Perhaps Audra can just be Audra, a ghost with a very familiar and very haunting story, conveniently set at a coastal hotel. We don't mean to be party poopers for all you ghost tourists out there. And we can always explore some of the others if we do choose to visit. After all, there's a first-floor bathroom that's apparently haunted by a poor former employee, Mr. Noble, who can be caught looking a guest in mirrors. Honestly, it seems embarrassing for everyone involved. And there have been reports of gangsters from the early 20th century haunting the hotel halls. Women's laughter has also been heard echoing throughout the property. And as for us, well, we'll listen hard for a little girl begging for ice cream. But we just don't buy stories of the footsteps of orphans, considering the distance of that tragedy from where the hotel was built. Unless, of course, there's another tale the hotel founders just never told, or just didn't know. After all, Galveston has seen its share of tragedy, those terrible storms, those very real graves scattered throughout the city, and so many lost in hurricanes that battered its shores, that the legends, they don't even live up to the reality. So perhaps when that's the case, well, there is some feeling of strangeness, of history, and of haunting that can settle into a place, even if the stories that are told about it aren't precisely true. Every grand place does have its secrets after all. Well, maybe they're kept even from the people who think that they know it best. We hope you'll join us next time for another real-life story from the fine print of America's local papers. From the lives of regular people, just like you and me, except for one strange thing. One Strange Thing is an independent podcast. To support the show and to hear more of the entirely true and enticingly peculiar, you can check out our premium offerings. If you'd like to subscribe on Apple Premium, you'll get both premium and ad-free and early access episodes, along with ad-free and early access to our other podcast, The Fall Line. If you subscribe on Patreon, you'll find ad-free releases of our regular episodes, a monthly full-length bonus episode, giveaways, and blog posts. We hope you'll check out one of these options and support the show. There's a link in the show notes. And if you enjoy One Strange Thing, please take a moment to leave us a great rating or review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps.